Okay guys, in this video we're going to be taking another look at Bitcoin to see exactly what's going to be going on here on the short term and our long-term thoughts here for BTC. As we get into it, if you find it useful and informative, do go ahead and give that a like. Really do appreciate that. And of course, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with everything we do here. It is free, you'll stay well informed, so why not? Tap that bell, hit on all, and you won't miss a video. Right, let's get into what is going on here. So here we have a Bitcoin to the USDT daily chart. Binance is the data source. And we have actually drawn up the schematic here for a Wyckoff accumulation pattern. This is that pattern that's currently kind of forming. So we wanted to make sure that this kind of is what is going on here. And if it is the case, then the likelihood is that we'll be moving up to our next target, which would put this thing at approximately 39,900. We'll call it 40K. Okay, so I'm going to be in that kind of zone there. Now, if this is not the case, then in fact, we should start to see this thing decline again, and it would actually then go down into a lower low in theory. So again, still kind of following this pattern for the accumulation. Now, there's lots of different things going on here, so I just want to kind of call out a few things. Obviously, there's the distribution that was going on up here, the Wyckoff distribution, and the pull down to the selling climax here. At least that's what I feel it is. Of course, lots of people are calling out that we should actually be coming down towards this 20K support level, but there are support levels on that journey on the way down. We have 24K, for example, and we also have 28K. So in the case of lots of people wanting to know where we are, I think we're in phase B here. Loads of people think phase C. The problem with this is generally speaking that you need to have a lower low if you think that the spring's already happened. Okay, of course we could actually have had this peak over here. Okay, that's also a possibility, but normally this pattern and the way that it normally forms would actually be more in line with what you're seeing right now. So typically thinking that actually we'll be in the selling climax of phase B, and this is just because it's the first lower low than the selling climax. Okay, so selling climax first, followed by a secondary test. We actually have a double tap on that here, which is unusual. You don't normally see it, but it can happen, obviously. Then we obviously have this run to the upside before pulling down into the secondary test in phase B. This is the first lower low from the selling climax, and that's why we haven't seen the spring yet, because the spring would be lower than the secondary test in phase B, which is already lower than the selling climax, and we have not had 3 lower lows in this sequence yet. So this kind of makes me feel that we're actually heading towards this 40K target just up here before we have a pullback, before going up to about 41, and then we'll dwindle down to a lower area. Now, when it comes to BTC, we'll obviously have a look at the hourly in a moment, because there's some interesting things going on there. But obviously, by the time we come over to the later part of this phase B, a decision will be made by the institutions. Obviously, this whole pattern is institutional manipulation. That's what this design is designed to do, is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible and to steadily accumulate it. You can't buy too much in one go because you'll move the needle too much. So ultimately, there's going to be a decision that will have to be made at this point down here, and it will all depend on how many people have gone long and how many people have gone short, or specifically the value of long and the value of short positions. And if we're going to say, let's say there's a load of short positions currently out there, a huge value assigned to it, then the institutions are not going to have the spring event that you're thinking that will happen in phase C. Instead, there will be a different variation of this Wyckoff accumulation, which will push the price higher, liquidating all those short positions. And the same will be said if there's loads of long positions. When we get to this point down here, we will see that lower low get set, and we'll actually see basically all those long positions get liquidated. Okay, so ultimately that's the event that you're looking for. You're looking to see what happens here with BTC, and ultimately we could still be in the situation where we're actually in this area just here, and we're waiting for that situation to actually happen. And again, this would be in line, but we would have had our secondary test in phase B first. So ultimately, guys, what we're looking for is to kind of come up to this higher high, this higher 40K test before we actually get into that decision making, and to understand where things are going. And obviously, if you're a Bitcoin holder or you're an altcoin holder, you're going to be wanting to pay a lot of attention to what is going on here, because this will obviously determine much of the space, right? Everything is kind of following Bitcoin. It's pretty much following the same patterns. You can take a look at the 𝗕𝗘𝗪 chart, for example, pretty much the similar kind of thing going on there. So again, we're going to be watching this situation, how many people are going short, how many people are going long at this point, and that will hopefully give us an idea and a flavor as to which direction you're going. Once we're past phase C, however, everything goes into normal mode. We go phase D with site of strength or sign of strength, moving up into grade E. And obviously, yeah, once we're up there, we'll be moving along nicely for Bitcoin and many of these altcoins as well. So again, lots of people are calling out lower lows. If there is a spring event, then I think the first number that we need to be really paying attention to is going to be the 28K area. And then if it goes lower than that, the 24K area, okay? In order to get us down to that 20K area, it's going to take a significant event to be able to do that. And I'm not sure, because considering the whole purpose of this accumulation pattern is for basically these institutions to accumulate. They don't want the price to necessarily drop too far, because they do want people buying in at certain key levels in order to basically, accumulate more as they try to force people to sell. So dropping it down to 20K would be a significant low that it would be hard to see that this actually in an accumulation pattern. Instead, you'd see potentially what a lot of people are calling out the end of the distribution period, which obviously was down here. They look at that starting up there before going on up to that distribution. Now, the problem that I have with this at the moment is this seems to have carried on too long this way, and it has formed this accumulation pattern earlier than maybe many were expecting. So if it does fall down there, then obviously that's a possibility that we actually haven't actually started the accumulation. But yeah, we'll have to address that as and when that comes. Now, the interesting thing is obviously the volumes were starting to really come up here, started to actually dwindle back down. There's loads of interesting news articles in the space as well. I think Chris has gone through those. So again, when it comes to Bitcoin on this kind of daily chart, it's important that we understand that we are kind of forming this pattern at the moment, but it hasn't been confirmed just yet. We need to see that next target really come in and a pullback, and then one more push to the upside. And then I'm pretty confident that's exactly where we are in this chart. So we'll have to see in the next kind of week or so to see how that one forms out. But let's jump down into our hourly, and this is where things got interesting over the weekend. We started to see this parallel channel start forming on the hourly chart here for BTC, and again, this is an upward trend. We can see that it's been tested significantly on the downside, and when it got tested down here yesterday, you saw this rocket move up to the upside. It had a bit of a breakout event here, but we entered overbought on that relative strength index, so we had a dip down, still testing this upper boundary, and pulled back in. Now that relative strength index is back in line. The volumes and the sentiment in the market hasn't changed much. We can see that quite clearly here in terms of a decrease in volume, but obviously we're running out of steam here, so we are in that midway point. I think we could potentially see a bit of a downward kind of trend for a moment, find the bottom of this channel, and then we'll see another move to the upside. I do feel that this is our journey up to those higher areas. So let me just quickly expand this this way so we can see exactly what that might look like. Okay, so basically this will be our journey potentially moving on up to this 40K area where we're constantly kind of battling our way through on this line. So again, we'll have to see if this kind of plays its way out. Obviously, we tested the upper boundary. I think if we were a little bit lower on our relative strength index, we would have actually had a significant breakout of this channel, but we were pulled right back in. So again, we'll monitor that and see if this is if this is what our journey looks like in terms of moving it further forward. Right now, we are still pretty high on that relative strength index, so this is telling me that we're more than likely in the next few hours have a little bit of a lower area testing down on the lower boundary of our channel before eventually we actually get that motion to the upside. So expect a few red candles in a few hours, just kind of bubbling along here, because that ultimately that volume has been decreasing. And I think once that sentiment starts shifting and changing with some of those interesting news articles that are coming out as well, we'll see more volume come in. That will help us push from the bottom end of the channel back to the upper end of the channel. And again, I think this is going to be something that we're going to see for quite some time whilst we head on up towards our 40K target. And if that does come in and we do get there, then we'll expect a pullback probably down to about 35K before testing 41, 42K. And then obviously that's where things really heat up with this Wyckoff accumulation pattern. So guys, it's worth paying attention to not just the hourly view, the 4 hourly, 8 hourly, or the smaller time frames. Pay attention to what's going on that daily chart, on that weekly chart, see how those patterns are forming, what's going on there. Ultimately, what we're witnessing is potentially a start of phase B, which would see some interesting high areas. We've seen the narratives in the news start to shift and change. Be cautious when it comes to these things. Obviously, there are going to be some fantastic high areas being hit later on, in the bull run, the second half of the year, early 2022. And again, those haven't really changed much. We're still calling for over 100k. The Fibonacci is saying 178k, maybe 182 at the upper boundary level. And again, there's loads of analysts out there still talking about really high numbers for Bitcoin, and loads of people are super confident on 100k coming in, and I am too. I wasn't a believer initially until I started to see the basically the manipulation of the Wyckoff Wyckoff distribution and the Wyckoff accumulation. These are in line with the Fibonacci, with our registrant index, both the stochastic and stochastic, as well as the regular registrant index, the volumes, the news, Elon Musk, all of it being gelled together. And actually, you're starting to see a bit of a pattern here with all these news pieces coming out at very specific points that actually are aligning to the way and the directions that these patterns need to go at these specific times. So ultimately, I'm pretty confident that we're going to see that. We talk a lot about the stock to flow model. We talk about all of the other kind of metrics and things that we see here in the space. Bitcoin is going to be turbulent for the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks or so, I would have thought. Specifically, actually kind of coming in towards the end of July. That's going to be a key moment. I feel that we'll probably be moving out of this accumulation phase altogether, moving into that fifth wave, which we obviously have on our weekly chart. Let me just pull this down. Talking about moving up towards 182 in the upper boundary there. And again, this is something that we talk about from basically from the March crash of 2020, moving on up in 5 clear waves to the upside, going after 182k. And again, this is something that, again, it could potentially be extended beyond, because if we do drop down any lower, that just pushes the boundary on where ultimately we can go. So if we drop down to 24k, for example, we'll be talking about 195k top range for Bitcoin and BTC here. So it's well worth kind of paying attention to all of those key time frames, having a good view and a good idea about the bigger picture and where we're heading towards this later part of the year. And of course, what this means overall, right? And hopefully, you found this useful and informative. If you have, then do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. Chris really appreciates it. If you happen to be new to the channel, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you'll be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed. Hit the bell, tap on all, and you won't miss a single video. With that said, done and out of the way, guys, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one.